She just wanted to observe, until she saw a human tear a legendary predator apart with his bare hands. The twin sons of Irex, 9, scorched the jagged landscape in hues of gold and cyan. The sky above shimmered with a pale green aurora that never faded, an eerie phenomenon of this alien world. Sharp crystalline trees swayed in winds too quiet to hear, reflecting light like millions of shifting mirrors. It was beautiful. It was hostile. And it was not her home. Celia crouched atop a cliff edge, her pale blue skin glinting in the sunlight. Her white hair fell like strands of silk over her shoulder, eyes glowing violet behind a data lens. She recorded everything. The behavior of the creatures below, the mineral composition of the spires, the way the light bent unnaturally near the horizon. Her species, the Elvexi, believe in understanding before intervention. But what she was really doing was watching him, the human. He wasn't supposed to be here. He moved through the valley like a ghost. No sound, no wasted motion. His clothes were dust-covered, ripped in places. His name, she'd learned, was Daniel Reese, a former Earth soldier. His file, which she'd hacked through a restricted military network, was filled with redacted lines and one repeated phrase: classified, close combat asset, non-standard deployment. She didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. Daniel's presence on Virex 9 was unofficial. The Elvexi had forbidden human intervention during the survey period. But there he was, making shelter, hunting, surviving, with no apparent support. Celia had orders not to interfere. Observe only. Still, she watched him every day. And not just for scientific reasons. There was something wrong about how he moved. Like he was used to danger that wasn't there. Like he was waiting for something to strike. That something came on the 9th rotation. At first, the atmosphere vibrated, a low hum that silenced the wind. Birds vanished into cracks between rocks. Then the light dimmed, as if both suns had suddenly backed away from the planet. And it emerged. The Hernok, the apex predator of Virex 9. 6 meters tall, bioengineered muscle and armor-plated flesh. It wasn't native. It was placed here millennia ago by a now extinct species. The Hernok hunted in silence. It dismembered for sport. It was the reason Elvexi scouts were forbidden to travel without a guard unit. Celia didn't have one. She froze, heart pounding in a rhythm too loud in her ears. She activated the cloaking mesh in her suit, praying the field would hold. The Hernok didn't see her. Not yet. It was focused on someone else. Daniel. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He turned toward it. Celia's hand flew to her mouth. She tapped her lens frantically, switching to zoom. The Hernok charged, seismic footfalls shaking the very cliff she perched on. It moved like thunder-made flesh. A death machine. Daniel didn't raise a weapon. He had none. Instead, he waited until the beast was 3 meters away, and then he moved. So fast the lens lost focus. He slid under its arm, grabbed a shard of black obsidian from the ground, and jammed it into the back of the beast's knee joint. The Hernok roared, spun, but he was already on its back, climbing it like a cliff face, gripping skin between armor plates. The beast rolled, crashed into the cliff. Daniel held on. Then he drove his elbow into the creature's spinal ridge, again and again, until the bone gave way with a sickening crunch. He dropped down, grabbed the obsidian shard again, and slashed across the artery behind its jaw. Blood sprayed in a dark arc. The Hernok collapsed in the dirt, twitching, dying. Daniel stood over it, panting, covered in blood that wasn't his. Celia couldn't breathe. She had seen elite Elvexi hunters fall to the Hernok in under 10 seconds. And this human, this stranger, had torn it apart with his bare hands. He looked up, straight at her, through the cloaking field. She stumbled back, startled. He can see me. Impossible. The field wasn't visible to human eyes. Then he did something even stranger. He raised his hand slowly and waved. A casual, tired wave, as if to say, "You watching? I don't care." And then he walked away, like it had meant nothing. But to Celia, it meant everything. Because for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar coil in her chest, something her species had no word for. Awe. Celia couldn't stop shaking. Even hours after the Hernok lay still, even after she'd retreated to her mobile observatory 2 kilometers away, Her mind refused to let go of what she saw. A human. Not just surviving Virex 9, but dominating it. Doing what no Elvexi warrior had ever done. Alone. Without gear. Without backup. She sat on the metal floor, breathing shallowly, running the footage back again and again through her lens. Zooming in on every angle. Tracking his blood-soaked hands. The grim focus in his expression. The casual wave. How? No stimulant enhancement. No armor. Just instinct. Brutality. Precision. But there was something else behind his eyes too. Not rage. Not adrenaline. Resignation. As if he had done this before. As if he didn't even hate the creature. Just knew it had to die. Her chest tightened. She hadn't transmitted the footage to Central Command. Not yet. She knew what would happen if she did. Daniel would be extracted. Interrogated. Possibly eliminated for violating planetary protocol. And that thought bothered her. She found him again on day 10. Near the old ruin site in the northern canyons. This time, she didn't cloak. Daniel looked up when she emerged from brush. Slowly. Calmly. No surprise. As if he'd expected her all along. Thought you'd say something sooner, he said, his voice gravel and weariness. You've been watching me for days. Cilia tensed. How did you see me? He shrugged. Same way I see everything. I look. She stepped closer, carefully. The tension in the air was thick. She could smell the leftover blood in the dirt. You broke protocol. Humans aren't allowed on this world during the survey cycle. Yeah. He tossed a piece of dried ration into his mouth. Tell your people they should lock the doors better. You shouldn't be here. He met her eyes. Neither should the Hernok. And yet, that shut her up. Silence stretched between them. The wind whistled through jagged stones. He sat cross-legged, calmly chewing. She remained standing, tense as a wire. Finally, he asked, what do you want to know? Everything, she thought. Instead, she said, why didn't you run? He gave a tired smile. Not smug, just real. I don't run anymore. Do you know what that thing was? I know what things like that are. That was a Hernok, she said. A relic predator. Engineered to kill anything that moves. There's no record of anyone defeating one unarmed. I'm not a record, he said. His words weren't prideful. They were factual. Heavy with pain. Cilia sat down across from him, her knees folding neatly. She stared at him like a puzzle too dangerous to solve, but too compelling to ignore. Why are you here, Daniel? He exhaled. I needed somewhere quiet. This isn't quiet. This is a death planet. Exactly. That answer chilled her. She began to return daily. At first, it was just questions. Scientific, factual, clinical. But soon the questions drifted. To Earth. To war. To loss. He never told her everything, but the fragments painted a picture darker than she expected. Daniel had been part of something called Project Bastion, a unit trained for hostile, close-quarters combat in alien environments. It was eventually shut down after a mission went wrong and the wrong species saw what they could do. Earth buried the project, discharged the soldiers. Most didn't make it. He did. Barely. And now he was here. Not running. Not surviving. Just existing. Waiting for something to finally take him down. Cilia felt her protocols unraveling. She was trained not to form bonds with non-Elvexi, especially not unauthorized presences. But the longer she stayed near him, the harder it became to pretend she was only observing. He was quiet, focused, brutal when necessary, but never cruel. There was still something inside him, something broken, yes, but not hollow. She began sharing pieces of herself too. The way Elvexi lived in light gardens. The melodic way her people spoke underwater. The way her skin shimmered in the dark due to biolight. One night he asked, why blue? She raised an eyebrow. What? Your skin. It's brilliant. Almost glowing. Like ocean water, just before a storm. She blinked. You think that's beautiful? I didn't say beautiful, he said, meeting her eyes. I said brilliant. The heat that flushed through her chest had nothing to do with temperature. She turned away quickly. She wasn't supposed to feel anything, but she did. Then came the order. From command. She was to transmit her logs immediately, including all recordings of the human's actions and coordinates. A retrieval unit had been dispatched. ETA, 36 hours. Daniel's fate was sealed. She stood under the crystal tree that night, her lens blinking red with the uplink connection. She stared at the send, all command. Her finger hovered and didn't move. Celia didn't sleep that night. She stood beside the uplink terminal, staring at the command screen as the message from command blinked like a curse. Immediate data upload required. Non-compliance will trigger escalation. Retrieval unit ETA 36H. She could feel her whole career dissolving under that message. She was an Elvexi observer, sworn to the doctrine of non-interference. Her people prided themselves on objectivity, control, logic, and yet, she hadn't pressed send, not because she was afraid, but because of him, Daniel. The way he fought, the way he looked at her without fear, the quiet dignity in him, even when covered in blood. He wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't just a rogue. He was alive in a way she couldn't define. She closed the terminal without sending anything. At dawn, she found him by the water shelf, shirtless, bruised, cleaning blood from a makeshift blade. His back was scarred, deep ridges of old burns and slash wounds that told stories of battles no one had documented. "You didn't sleep," he said, without looking. "How would you know?" "Because I didn't either." She sat beside him. The silence between them had grown comfortable, like something shared, not empty. "I got the order," she said finally. He nodded. "To report me?" "Yes." He didn't look surprised. "And did you?" "No." Daniel's hand froze mid-wipe. He turned toward her slowly. "Why not?" She looked at the ground. "Because I don't think they'll understand what you are. Not really. And I don't want to watch them break what's left of you." His jaw clenched. "Then you're already in danger." "I know." He stood up, tossing the rag aside. His face hardened. "You shouldn't have done that. You think your people won't notice the delay? You think they won't come harder?" "I know they will." "Then why?" Her voice broke, soft and fragile in the canyon air. "Because you're the only thing on this world that's real." That silenced him. For a moment, the predator and prey dynamic vanished. They were just two beings, broken, defiant, and more alike than they wanted to admit. Later that day, the air changed again. The kind of change you feel before a storm, before a death, before the truth. They were tracking movement through the outer sensors, multiple heat signatures. Not Elvexi, not animal. It didn't make sense. This quadrant was sealed. Then they saw them. Mercenaries. Human, but not military. Row contractors, off-grid. Armed with illegal tech and orbital armor plates. They shouldn't have had access to this planet, but someone had paid for silence. They were hunting something. Or someone. "They're here for me," Daniel said flatly. Celia looked up. "Your government sent them?" He shook his head. "No. They're the other kind. The kind that sells evidence to the highest bidder. Somebody found out I was alive. And what I did." Her stomach turned. "They want proof. They want me dead before I become a scandal." "What will they do to you?" "What they always do," he said. "Disappear me." Celia took a step forward. "Then we leave. I have a stealth shuttle. We can." "No." "What?" "I'm not running again." She grabbed his arm, her voice rising for the first time. "You'll die. I've been ready for that a long time." "Well, I'm not." That stopped him. Her fingers were still on his skin, warm against old scars. Her violet eyes burned into his. "You don't get to give up," she said. "Not after what I've seen you survive. Not after what we've been through. You're not my responsibility, Celia." "No," she said. "But you're mine now." The first mercenaries breached the ridge by nightfall. Celia and Daniel set traps across the valley. Explosive minerals, heat flares, false trails. They knew it wouldn't stop them all. She looked at him in the starlight. "What if we don't make it?" Daniel smiled, the kind of smile that held both sadness and peace. "Then at least I won't be alone." Celia leaned forward and touched her forehead to his, the Elvexi gesture of absolute trust. His breath caught. She whispered, "You're not just something I observed anymore." Then they moved. The first kill came fast. Daniel dropped from a ledge and crushed a merc's throat before the man could scream. He took his sidearm, then his communicator, then vanished again. Celia moved through shadows, using her cloaking mesh to intercept transmissions and mislead their enemy. The two of them weren't just surviving. They were fighting together, and it was flawless, until one of the mercs got a visual on her. The cloaking failed under direct plasma fire. She screamed as she hit the dirt, her shoulder burned, suit tearing. The merc raised his rifle. "Don't move, blue girl." He never saw Daniel behind him. A blade, a choke, a scream muffled by bone. The merc crumpled. Daniel dropped to his knees beside her, eyes wide. "You're hit." "I've had worse," she hissed. "Liar." He ripped fabric from his own shirt, pressed it to the wound, held her eyes. "You're not dying here," he said. Then the ridge exploded behind them. Smoke. Fire. Screams. More were coming. The air was thick with smoke and scorched metal. The night on Virex. 9 glowed red, not from sunsets, but from fire and plasma blasts. The ambush had shifted. What was once a hunt became a siege. Celia's shoulder throbbed, the burn wound numbing her arm. She and Daniel had taken shelter inside a collapsed cave system. Narrow, unstable, filled with glowing fungi and jagged obsidian shards. It was a death trap if found. "I can hold them here," Daniel said, voice low but firm. He was already reloading the stolen plasma rifle. Celia shook her head. "You won't survive." "I'm not supposed to." She moved in front of him, forcing him to stop. "No," she said, voice shaking. "You don't get to say that anymore. Not after everything. Not after me." His eyes, those tired, gray war eyes, locked on hers. "If I don't stop them, you die. And if you die, I won't care what happens to me." Silence. Then something broke behind his expression. Not fear, not pain. Resolve. He dropped the rifle and stepped toward her. "You're not like them," he said. "You never were." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "The Elvexi. Your people observe. Catalog. You're told not to feel. But you did. You let me in. You didn't send a report." "I couldn't," she whispered. "You chose not to," he corrected. He reached up and brushed her cheek. His calloused fingers were warm despite the cold around them. Then, soft, sudden, like the world had stopped just to let it happen, he kissed her. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't frantic. It was real. Unspoken things passed between them in that second. Pain, fury, hope, and something neither had expected to find out here, on a dead world. Then the rock behind them exploded. The mercenaries had found the cave. They dropped to the ground, Daniel pulling her behind cover. Shards rained like shrapnel. A drone floated into the entryway, scanning for heat signatures. Celia tapped her lens, overriding the signal field. "I can trigger a pulse. Overload the cave. Collapse it. Bury them inside. You'll bury us too. I'll make it to the next chamber. You run." I said I'm not leaving. She grabbed his face, kissed him again, and whispered, "You don't get to be a weapon anymore. You get to be a person. Now run." Before he could stop her, she activated the field and dove into the side tunnel. Daniel hesitated for only half a heartbeat, then ran. The blast shook the mountain. Daniel surfaced 2 hours later, lungs burning, face cut, fury boiling through every breath. He stood atop the ridge where it had all started, the place she first saw him fight the Hernok. He stared into the valley. There was no sign of her, just smoke, ash, and silence. "She's gone," he muttered. "She did it to save me." But as he turned to leave, a static pulse cracked through his communicator, a code sequence only he and Celia knew. 3 pulses. A pause. 2 more. She was alive. He followed the signal north, through the dead forest, and into the caves of the Crystal Zone, a place the mercenaries wouldn't dare follow. He found her there, alive but weak, her arm wrapped in bloodstained cloth. Her lens cracked. When she saw him, her eyes filled with light. "You're not easy to kill," he said. "You neither." He knelt beside her, breathing relief like it was oxygen. "They'll regroup. We have maybe 6 hours. Then we use it," she said, pushing up on her good arm. "For what?" "To end this." They set the trap using old Elvexi mining equipment hidden in the crystalline caves. Gravitational amplifiers, resonance destabilizers, compressed ion cores. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't sanctioned. But it would wipe the mercenary encampment off the map. "You sure about this?" he asked, setting the final charge. "If we let them live," she said, "they'll come for both of us. Again and again." He nodded. "Then we don't give them a second chance." They activated the sequence and retreated to the ridge. Below them, a pulse wave exploded outward, beautiful and terrible. It turned metal to ash, ground to glass, and silence to shock. They were gone. All of them. Celia sat beside him, wind brushing her white hair into his face. "We'll be fugitives now," she said. "I already was." "And me?" He looked at her, half smiling. "You sure you want that?" "I don't want anything else." If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, if you believe that connection can survive even the worst odds, then don't forget to hit subscribe. There's more where this came from. The valley was dead quiet. Where once the mercenaries had camped, where machinery hummed and orders barked and men with weapons planned slaughter. Now, only glass and silence remained. A crater shimmered in the fading twilight, glowing faintly with residual energy from the Elvexi pulse weapons. The trees were gone. The rock was melted. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. Daniel stared at it without expression. Celia stood beside him, swaying slightly, her injured arm supported by a band of hardened cloth and improvised nanogel. "That's it," she said softly. "They're gone." Daniel didn't reply. "Say something," she added. He exhaled. "I don't know what to say when there's no one left to fight." Her violet eyes narrowed. "You're allowed to feel relief." "I don't," he said. "I only feel tired." She looked at him for a long time. He was right, not physically exhausted, but existentially drained, like a man who had poured everything into survival and now had no idea what to do with peace. "You saved my life," she said. "So did you. I broke laws that could get me exiled. I destroyed Elvexi technology. I aided a human fugitive." Daniel turned to her. "You regret it?" "No." And that was the truth. The terrifying, freeing truth. They returned to the crystal caves. The deeper tunnels were cooler now, faintly humming with bioelectric light. Celia patched the uplink manually, scrubbing records, hiding what they'd done, deleting traces. Daniel watched her work in silence. After a while, she said, "You can't stay here. I know. You'll need to leave orbit. Find another planet. Disappear. I've done it before." She stopped, fingers hovering over the control panel. "Not like this." He glanced at her. "You mean not without you?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Daniel stood, walking to the ledge that overlooked the bioluminescent river far below. The same one they'd hidden near on day 5. The same place she first told him about her home. "I don't know how to stop being what I am," he said. "Even when I'm not fighting, I feel like I'm still in combat. Like it's in my blood." "That's trauma," she said. "Not identity. Maybe. You're more than what Earth made you." He turned slowly. "And what are you? Now that you've broken your people's rules?" She smiled. Faint, sad, beautiful. "I guess I'm more than what the Elvexi trained me to be." That night, a windstorm hit the canyon. Inside the caves, they sat by a glowstone fire, close for warmth, but closer still because they needed each other. Daniel cleaned her wound with careful hands. "You know," he said, "I was prepared to die here. And now I think I was already dead before I met you." Her eyes filled with something fragile. Not pity, not sorrow. Something gentler. "You're not dead anymore." His hand lingered on her arm, rough against soft skin. "I don't know what comes next," he said. "Neither do I," she admitted. And for the first time, that didn't scare either of them. But peace was never simple. The next day, a private Elvexi scout drone passed over the northern ridge. Unregistered. Silent. Not part of command. Celia intercepted the signal. Encrypted, but she knew the pattern. It was from her sister, Kael'da, an elite enforcer and one of the high observers. "She knows," Celia said. Daniel tensed. "Will she come?" "She will." "What will she do?" Celia hesitated. "What she's trained to do. Contain me. Capture you. Erase the evidence. And if she can't, she'll destroy us both." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we run now." "No," she said. "There's one chance. I speak to her. Alone. I make her see." Daniel looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "You think logic will stop her?" "No," she replied. "But the truth might." The truth. That word used to mean something to Celia. Something pure, clinical, recorded. Now, it meant something painful. Something worth protecting. She left Daniel in the cave and climbed the southern ridge at dawn. The twin suns rose behind her like judging eyes. Wind lashed her white hair. Dust clung to her skin. She stood on the edge of a broken world and waited. At mid-morning, the ship arrived. Sleek. Silent. Elvexi. From it descended Kael'da, armored in obsidian plating, hair pulled back, expression as cold as Virex ice. "I expected more resistance," her sister said. "You'll get it," Celia answered. "You broke protocol. You violated the first tenets. You harbor a hostile. Do you deny it?" "No." "Then give me his coordinates, and I'll make this painless." Celia stepped forward. He's not what they told us humans are. They're all chaos. Violence. They infect every world they touch. Not him. He killed 12 men. They came to kill us. Khalid's face didn't change. Celia pressed on. He could have let me die. He didn't. He could have run. He didn't. He chose to stand beside me. Emotion clouds judgment. No, Celia said, voice rising. Emotion defines judgment. Without it, we're just machines following orders. You taught me that. That made Kale the pause. Just a flicker. Then, you love him. It wasn't a question. Celia nodded. Yes. Silence. Long. Then you're already lost. Kale raised her weapon. The weapon hummed in Khalid's hands. Celia didn't flinch. She stared down the woman who'd raised her like a second mother, who had taught her how to think, how to question, how to defend her mind from interference. And now that same woman stood ready to end her. You're choosing extinction, Kale said coldly. I'm choosing truth, Celia answered. They stood in silence atop the ridge, the wind whistling through crystalline trees below. Then a sound. Footsteps. Celia's stomach twisted. She knew that stride. Daniel. He should have stayed hidden. He should have let her handle it. But there he was, walking into range like a ghost made real. Khalid's weapon instantly shifted toward him. Move again and you die. Daniel didn't blink. If you kill her, you'll have to kill me first. Celia turned sharply. What are you doing? Standing with you. You said you wouldn't. I changed my mind. Khalid's face hardened. So be it. She fired. The pulse bolt ripped the air. Fast, hot, final. But it never reached them. At the last second, Celia activated her internal harmonic shield. Forbidden tech embedded in her body during a deep field mission years ago. No one even knew she kept it. The bolt fractured against a shimmering wave of violet light. Kale staggered back. You would use it on your own blood? No, Celia said, stepping forward. I'm using it for the first time. For me. Then she raised her wrist, triggered a quantum key, and erased her Elvexi clearance ID. Her access. Her title. Her rank. Gone. I'm no longer part of the Corps, she said. I walk my own path now. Kale stared at her, stunned. Silent. Finally, she lowered her weapon and walked away. No more threats. No more words. Just silence. Celia collapsed hours later. The harmonic pulse had drained her systems. Her injury reopened. Her body trembled with fever. Daniel carried her back through the canyon, his jaw locked, his hands bloody from holding her too tight. You're not dying, he kept repeating. You don't get to do that now. In the cave, he laid her down gently, injected a stim pack, wrapped her tighter in thermal layers. Why did you come? She asked, voice cracked. You really have to ask. She managed a faint smile. You said you were done being a weapon. I am. Then why risk your life? He brushed the hair from her forehead. Because I don't want to live in a world where you're gone. Her chest trembled, whether from pain or feeling. She couldn't tell anymore. I gave up everything, she said. I have no name now. No home. Then let's make a new one, he said softly. She looked up at him and saw it. Not the soldier. Not the killer. Just the man. Scarred. Silent. Steady. And hers. They moved deeper into the continent, far beyond any mapped region of Irex 9. The terrain turned bioluminescent, filled with glowing moss, towering mushrooms, and rivers that pulsed with underground starlight. There, in the heart of the wild, they built something. A shelter made of stone and root and stolen tech. A garden with water filters and wind-activated lights. A place where they didn't have to hide anymore. Daniel taught her how to defend without killing. Celia taught him how to listen without fear. Together, they trained, cooked, healed. Sometimes, they sat in silence and simply existed. On the 47th day since the attack, a storm hit the valley, a real one. Virex storms could last hours or weeks. This one brought thunder that cracked the sky and rain that glowed like plasma. In the middle of it, Daniel pulled her outside. She shouted over the wind, "What are you doing?" He smiled, rain streaking his face. "You said you'd never seen a storm like this. I meant from inside." He pulled her closer, hand around her waist. They stood under the downpour, soaked, laughing alive. The rain hissed off the rocks. "I never thought I'd be part of anything like this," she said. "Neither did I." She leaned her head on his chest. "Do you regret it?" He didn't answer immediately. "No," he said finally. For once in my life, I don't feel like I'm surviving someone else's war. She tilted her head up to him. What do you feel? He kissed her forehead, slow and certain. Like I've finally come home. The warning came during the night. Daniel was on the ridge, adjusting the wind harvesters, when he saw the pulse on the horizon. A rhythmic flicker in the upper atmosphere, like the heartbeat of a machine trying to sync with a world that rejected it. He ran back fast. Celia was already scanning the uplink when he entered the shelter, eyes wide, breath shallow. It's not Olvexi, not mercenaries. It's worse. Ooh, she turned the screen. Daniel's chest tightened. The signature was unmistakable, dark, smooth, synthetic. Earth, not just any unit. Project Bastion, his old unit, or what was left of it. Impossible, he said. Bastion was shut down. Not all of it, apparently, Celia replied. Your shutdown just turned into a blacker file. They rebuilt it, and they're here. For you. Daniel sat heavily. They never leave loose ends. How did they find us? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were always watching. She looked at him, pain behind her violet eyes. So what do we do? Daniel didn't answer right away, because he knew what had to happen. They packed what they could, tools, data, medkits, a fragment of Celia's uplink. Everything else they burned. The shelter, the tech, the garden, the peace. All of it turned to flame and smoke as they fled into the deeper wilds, into the territory no one mapped. We'll lose them in the ravines, Daniel said. They're not mercs, Celia replied. They're you. Trained like you. They'll think like you. Then I need to stop thinking like me. By the third night, the Bastion unit had cut off 3 escape routes and eliminated every possible signal decoy. There were only 2 of them, and 6 of the unit. Enhanced, equipped, relentless. Daniel knew their tactics. He'd used them himself, and that meant he also knew they wouldn't take him alive. They'd execute on sight. And Celia, she'd be handed off to a lab. We can't outrun them, he said. Not forever. Celia placed her hand on his. Then we end this. He looked at her. You mean? Yes. We won't survive. She met his gaze. We already have. The rest is just extra. They made their stand in a natural sinkhole of obsidian pillars and bioluminescent fog. A place where technology struggled and instincts thrived. Daniel laid the traps. Celia reprogrammed an L-Vexi gravity shell, a high-yield field meant for structural collapse. I can trigger it manually, she said. Daniel froze. You're not staying behind. She didn't respond. He grabbed her wrist. No. You know it's the only way. Then I'll do it. You can't. You have to draw them in. You're the bait. You're the one they want. And you're the one I love, he snapped. She stepped closer, pressing her forehead to his. That's why I have to do it. A pause. A breath. Then, promise me something, she whispered. Anything. Live. If this works live. And remember. He touched her face with reverence. I'll never forget you. They came at dawn. Fast. Precise. Black-clad. Faces covered in bioshields. Moving like death. Daniel drew them in. Feinting left, leading them deeper, using every scar of the terrain against them. Celia waited at the control node, heart pounding, the detonation panel blinking red in her hand. The first shot hit Daniel's shoulder. He didn't fall. He kept running. 2 more agents followed. He ducked, rolled, slashed one down with a crystal shard, took the other in the leg. The rest spread out. They cornered him against the pit wall. Then, Celia pressed the trigger. The field cracked open like a sun being born underground. Light exploded. Gravity folded. Time staggered. The ground swallowed everything. When it ended, there was silence. No agents. No noise. No Daniel. Just smoke. And a single blue hand gripping the edge of the sinkhole. She pulled him up, sobbing. He was burned, bloodied, barely breathing. But alive. He coughed. Said you'd trigger it manually. I lied. He tried to laugh, but it hurt too much. She wrapped her arms around him. You're not allowed to die. Guess I'm still not. They lay there together, bodies wrecked, but souls intact. He would carry a scar from that detonation for the rest of his life. A burn across his ribs that never fully healed. A reminder of what it cost to stop being a weapon. She would never be welcome among her people again. The pulse tech she used violated a dozen codes of ethics. She didn't care. They had stopped running. And finally, they were free. The light over Virex. 9 was different now. Maybe it was the season shifting. Maybe it was the dust finally settling. Or maybe, just maybe, it was what happens when violence stops echoing through the soil. For the first time in weeks, there were no drones in the sky. No enemy signals. No coordinates flashing red. Only stillness. And space to breathe. Daniel stood by the river that curved around their new camp. What little was left after the collapse. The burn on his side still stung when the wind blew just right. He didn't cover it. He wore it like a badge. Not of pride, but of truth. Behind him, Celia was planting roots. Actual roots. She had salvaged a few living samples from the valley before the final battle. Now she knelt beside the earth, coaxing blue blossoms out of nutrient gel, humming an old Elvexi lullaby as she worked. Daniel watched her from a distance for a while before speaking. "You know," he said, "it's funny." She looked up. "What is?" "I used to dream about disappearing, just vanishing off the grid, starting over somewhere no one could find me. And now, I did it," he said. "But the only reason I survived it was you." Celia wiped her hands on her cloak and walked over to him, the wind playing in her white hair. "You didn't just survive," she said. "You changed." He raised an eyebrow. "I still feel like the same man." She took his hand. "You're not. The man I first watched from a cliff was alone, angry, waiting to die. And now you look forward when you wake up." Daniel thought about that. Really thought. She was right. There was no more plan. No more mission. No command structure. No orders. No war. But there was purpose. There was a reason to build again. To stay. To learn. And her name was Celia. That night, they sat together by the fire pit, the stars moving slowly across the green sky. He rested his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him without a word. They didn't speak much anymore. Not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing needed to be explained. Everything between them was clear. He cooked. She mapped. He built. She coded. He guarded. She grew. It wasn't balance. It was something deeper. Something like belonging. 3 days later, they received a transmission. Encrypted. Fragmented. Weak signal. It wasn't Elvexi. It wasn't Earth. It was a third source. An independent relay. Old tech. Rogue channel. "Survivors of the Bastion Project," the voice said. "If you're hearing this, we're not all gone. There's a place. Not safe, but free. Come if you can." Daniel's hand hovered over the reply button. Celia didn't speak. Then, "You don't have to." He looked at her. "But I could." "Yes," she said. "But would it be worth leaving this?" He paused, then turned off the receiver. "They'll find their way," he said. "I already found mine." Later, Celia etched something into a stone near their new shelter. Elvexi glyphs, simple but powerful. When Daniel asked what it said, she translated quietly. "We are what they try to break, but couldn't." He stared at the inscription, then nodded. There were no perfect endings. Daniel had stopped believing in that concept years ago, somewhere between the blood-stained halls of Bastion and the silence that followed. But as he stood now, barefoot in the morning light of Irex 9, watching Celia write something into the soil with a carved stick, he realized something unexpected. There were still endings that made sense, and beginnings that didn't need to be loud to matter. The storm season had passed. The world was warmer now. Even the light filtering through the jagged clouds felt less harsh, as if the planet itself had softened with them. Daniel was no longer haunted by footsteps in the dark. He no longer dreamed of orders barked through calms or the hiss of synthetic armor plates. His body still remembered, but his mind was quiet, and that, more than anything, was a miracle. He watched Celia from the shade. She was humming softly, trimming the roots of the plants they transplanted together. Her movements were fluid, focused, alive. He approached and knelt beside her. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "Your people, the stars, the life you left behind." She looked up, thoughtful. "I miss the sky gardens," she admitted. "I miss the water songs. I miss the scent of the city dome when it rains." Then, after a pause, "But I don't miss who I had to be to stay there." Daniel understood that, deeply. He tilted his head toward her. "And now I'm not being anything. I'm just existing. And for the first time, that's enough." He nodded. "I used to think I was a weapon," he said quietly. "Built for violence. Released only when necessary. Put away when the killing stopped. And now I think I was a man who didn't know what peace looked like. until someone showed me. She smiled at that. Not a soft smile. A knowing one. That night, they built a fire not out of need, but out of habit. They sat close, not for warmth, but for proximity. They told stories. She recited ancient Elvexi poems, ones that had never been translated to human languages. He told her about Earth's sunsets and real oceans, and how coffee tasted after 4 days without sleep. There were still wounds in both of them, memories that couldn't be unwritten. But those memories weren't in charge anymore. They were part of them, not all of them. Daniel leaned back, staring at the stars. You think they'll ever find us again? Celia shook her head. I think they'll try. But I also think we're harder to erase than they expected. He smirked. Damn right we are. She reached for his hand. He laced his fingers with hers. The fire crackled. The stars spun. The silence between them was no longer emptiness. It was everything earned. 2 years later, the valley was unrecognizable. What had once been raw wilderness was now a quiet refuge. Vines with bioluminescent leaves curled around stone pathways. The ruins of the old shelter had been rebuilt, not as a fortress, but as a home. A place where no one shouted orders, where no one tracked heat signatures, where no one carried weapons unless they had to. Daniel stood under the shade of a tree he'd planted himself. His hands were dirt-stained, his shirt torn at the collar. There was a line of silver in his hair now, earned, not aged. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked up. Across the garden, Celia knelt beside a child. A girl, half human, half Olvexi, blue skin that shimmered faintly under the sun, white curls that bounced as she moved, and eyes, violet and gray, that held too much soul for someone so young. Don't crush the roots, Celia said gently. I'm not, the girl said, pouting. I'm helping. You are, Daniel called from the tree. Best helper in the quadrant. The girl grinned. They didn't call her by any Earth name. They didn't name her for legacy or bloodlines. They called her Vera, born on Virex, between fire and peace, a name that meant nothing in the old systems, and everything here. At night, when the winds howled and the stars stretched low, Daniel would sit by the fire and tell Vera's stories, not just of monsters and battles, but of a woman who watched from the cliffs, of a man who fought when he didn't want to, of a moment that changed everything. And then, Vera would ask. Daniel would smile. Then they stopped running. Celia would lean in, and they built something no one else could take away. They never went back to Earth. They never contacted Elvexi High Command again. They stayed lost on purpose, because in being lost, they finally found something real. The past didn't vanish, but it didn't own them anymore. If this story moved you, if you believe love can survive across stars, cultures, scars, and silence, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs hope. And hit subscribe, because here, we don't just tell stories, we fight for them.